Historically, the African community here has never been xenophobic about other Africans. Economy is in crisis. I'm a former president of this country, and you'll never ever convince me that this economy is in crisis because of foreigners. It doesn't matter how many electrical fences you build. You are not going to stop these Africans coming here. So our challenge is to say, how do we deal with that reality? The issue is, how do we deal with these things who become new citizens of South Africa, new residents? We've got to find a way of dealing with it. It's a matter of great debate in this country about the so-called undocumented people. Since the beginning of diamond mining in the 19th century, later gold mining and all of that, this country has seen lots of Africans from the rest of the continent moving to this country. The issue of many other Africans being present with us is not new. And historically, the indigenous African community has never ever been hostile to other Africans coming from other African countries. Take the old townships, Alexander Township in Johannesburg. That township has always had people from all over the continent. With no friction, with no nothing. Historically, the African community here has never been xenophobic about other Africans. In 2008, all manner of trouble breaks out in Alexander Township in Johannesburg. Attack on these foreigners, particularly Zimbabweans. Then it spread elsewhere. Xenophobia, Afrophobia. So me, I say, when I saw that thing, I was in government, I was president. I say, but this is not Alexander Township. Alex for decades has had Zimbabweans and Mozambicans and this and that, and never ever this conflict. Why? There's a mistake we made as government, and not to disclassify an intelligence document about what happened in Alexander in 2008. That thing was organized to drive the Zimbabweans out of the country back to Zimbabwe because there were elections in Zimbabwe. It was people who were being driven out, they were going to vote against Bob Mugabe. An intelligence report which has got the names and the dates and venues where people met and planned this and so on. It's presented as a xenophobic attack by the people of Alex against it. It was wrong. It was organized, systematic for a political purpose. We've got many challenges of the economy here. Unemployment, very serious problem. So we've got to solve this problem. We've got to deal with this economy and deal with these problems of unemployment. At the same time, the country has got laws about migration of people. Let's enforce the laws. You can't just come in illegally. Yeah. So the thing about the registration of people undocumented is correct. But I'm saying it's incorrect to think that that economic crisis is caused by people who have come from the rest of the world. One of the things that happened, colleagues, very important in my view, is that the continent genuinely took it as one of its responsibility to help us to fight and defeat apartheid. The ordinary citizens would contribute monies to go into a common fund in order to support the struggle here in Namibia and Zimbabwe. That became a people's issue. Wherever you went around the continent, I've got Welly and Thabo here, former ambassador. Wherever you went on the continent, 1980, 1985, the focus on South Africa among the ordinary people was very high. The consequence of it is that when South Africa becomes liberated, the same masses, they say, I'm going to South Africa. It's natural. They develop that kind of very fondness and closeness to this country. So we must go to this country. It doesn't matter how many electrical fences you build. You are not going to stop these Africans coming here. So our challenge is to say, how do we deal with that reality? And then, my colleagues, you might also remember that a few years back, there were similar so-called xenophobic attacks in Durban. What the provincial government did there was to appoint a commission to go into that, which was chaired by Judge Navi Pillay. You'll find that report on the internet. And they deal with this question. They say the reality of the matter is, you've got many migrants coming from the continent and elsewhere who come here, and there's no way you're going to stop it. The issue is, how do we deal with these things who become new citizens of South Africa, new residents? We've got to find a way of dealing with it. When we're new in government here, issue was raised about there are many Mozambicans who come across the border and get employed by the farmers in the then Eastern Transvaal, paid low wages, outcompete the South African farm workers and all that. We must deal with this matter. So we agreed, and then a big movement took place to deport these Mozambicans back to Mozambique. I think we continued that program for 2 months at best and stopped it. The reason we stopped it is because the following week after they've been deported, they are back in the country. Or you had Lindela, this place they call Lindela for people who are being deported. Come Christmas time, the Zimbabweans would go to Lindela to say, I'm illegal. So that the government must convey them at its cost, transform them back to Zimbabwe. 2 days after New Year, they are back. How do you deal with this situation? I'm saying that I'm hoping that in the national dialogue, there will be a discussion of this. As an African, I belong to this old tradition. As in our culture, you are never ever hostile to a stranger. A visitor, a visitor who comes and get the best food in the house. It's a frame of mind. I hope that the matter will get discussed and then resolved in that context. The issue that has been discussed very vigorously on the land question, it's important that it has been discussed. What has happened to land that has been redistributed to people who had been dispossessed of land since 1994? And part of what you will see is that in the overwhelming majority of cases where people have won land claims, they have preferred to take the money rather than the land. It communicates a particular message, because here the history of land dispossession of the African community is of long standing. The result is that the attitude of the African population towards agriculture is very different from the position of the Zimbabweans towards agriculture. I saw an article over the weekend. The farms that where people took the farms, they say in the majority have collapsed because of absence of support from the government and all of that. So I'm saying we need to, the matter of food security is correct. It needs to be reviewed in the light of the actual history. What has happened with regard to this thing? It's like the question about equality in education. I'm sure all of us are very unhappy about our educational system. It's not producing the kind of person that is required. People who go to university and get bachelor's degrees in sociology and so on, afterwards they've qualified, they've got certificate, but what do they do? Attitude towards technical education, the TVET colleges, even the quality of the colleges themselves. I know of a TVET college here in Pretoria, which in the past, they would train technicians and people of this kind who would be required in the automobile industry. And BMW here in Roslyn was saying the equipment they are training on is 15 years out of date. So that by the time they take them on, the fact that they've got to retrain them. The kind of output, what comes out of the universities, unemployed graduates, a legitimate complaint, because maybe we're training for the wrong professions. And this fundamental matter of the state of the economy. Is the economy growing enough to be able to absorb new entrants? That becomes part of the matter. Thanks for the questions.